everyone, with Black Adam recently out in theaters, I thought it might be fun to go over my all-time favorite Black Adam comics. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already for more top 10 videos featuring this character and many others. And if you're already subscribed, just sit back and enjoy as we talk about the best of Black Adam. Number 10. New 52 Justice League and Forever Evil. An interesting facet of Black Adam is his ability as a character to stand out a little bit more than other, more traditional villains in comic book crossover events. In stories like Infinite Crisis, Endless Winter, Doomsday Clock, and even the kind of current Dark Crisis, Black Adam is able to often distinguish himself thanks to his heavy-duty power set and more neutral stance on morality compared to your average hero or villain. As such, even stories I'm not a huge fan of, like Doomsday Clock, do feature Black Adam well enough that I seriously considered it for being included on this top 10 video. In the end, however, with so many great Black Adam stories to choose from, only one crossover made the cut, Forever Evil. While Black Adam is not overly featured in this story, he is a pretty major force of nature and an early source of opposition to the crime syndicate. He shines most in these early pages, especially in this one single Justice League book that sort of follows up on the main series, where Black Adam challenges an evil Ultraman in single-handed combat, proving himself a formidable foe, at least until his jaw is broken. From there, Teth Adam joins up with Lex Luthor and other villains, ultimately saving the day. It's a really fun time for DC fans to see these traditional villains working for the greater good, in their own unique way, and Black Adam gets a few great moments doing so. Beyond that, the writer of New 52 Justice League, Jeff Johns, saw fit in this era of reboot continuity to re-examine the origins of Shazam and Black Adam in various issues across the Justice League series. While the New 52 take of Captain Marvel isn't the most popular take on the character, and rarely will you hear anyone say this version of that origin story is their favorite, myself included, one thing I always found pretty impressive was the stuff around Black Adam and his origins, which in my opinion are pretty well done. You could do a lot worse with an introduction for this character, and collectively these stories hold up as one of the better Black Adam takes in existence, and are what gave it and Forever Evil a little bit of edge over other events and crossover stories like this that feature Black Adam. Of course, that is just my opinion, and there are a lot of great Black Adam stories worth checking out. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Number 9. The Power of Shazam. We continue with a really cool graphic novel from the 90s. Though Black Adam, by this point, had been around for quite a bit, he had a long way to go from where he is today. While elements of this character's power and aggression exist all the way back in his first appearance, it quickly faded away as he became just another part of the Captain Marvel roster of villains, hardly even being the most interesting among them at the time. After Crisis of Infinite Earths, the climate of DC had changed quite a bit. Not only did many books step up in their quality, but many origin stories were revived and changed in ways that have stuck for a lot of these characters. This has led to a complex view of many heroes. For some, the post-crisis origin story has become basically the definitive take on the character. Jason Todd is a solid example of that, quickly evolving from a clear-cut Dick Grayson clone into something at least somewhat more distinct. For Black Adam and the Marvel family, this is less the case. The Power of Shazam is one of 2 new origin stories put out around this time, and while it is good enough for me to consider it one of the best of Black Adam, and is deeply important for making him a more interesting character, it doesn't quite fully realize the potential of Black Adam the way other stories would going forward. It's still good though, it's just very different. In this story, the character is now Theo Adam, a descendant of the original Black Adam, now sort of possessed by his ancestor, but largely his own separate individual just with the same powers as the original Black Adam. His character is okay in this story, but it feels like a lot of this is just done to give an excuse for why it's him that killed Billy Batson's biological parents in this continuity, which really just makes him and Captain Marvel, as he was called back then at least, a bit more of a superhero cliche. That one element of this story, and the fact that Black Adam is not really Black Adam, holds it back a little bit, but Power Shazam as a whole largely works. It's a great read in spite of a few limitations. Yes, it is less interesting to have Black Adam go from an ancient being with a direct connection to real-world ancient Egyptian nobility, and change that into a grumpy archaeologist. But this story is important in transforming this villain into one menacing and cool enough that he would merit his own feature film a few decades later. Black Adam really has a certain presence in this graphic novel that clearly inspired other creators down the road. And so this character owes a lot to writer Jerry Ordway, and more significantly, the beautiful, striking, and memorable art done by him as well, backed up by the talents of Peter Krause, Mike Manley, Dick Giordano, and Glenn Whitmore. These artists bring Black Adam to life in a way that really makes this story stand out in the character's history, even after so many years. And yes, while it might not be the perfect story, it absolutely is good and worth reading. Remarkably, even with all these dramatic changes to the character, it still is also pretty much in continuity thanks to some clever writing down the road. Number 8. Shazam, The New Beginning. Next up is the other post-crisis revised take on Black Adam's origins. Originally published before The Power of Shazam, The New Beginning also makes a number of changes to the Marvel family, but Roy Thomas, his wife Dan Thomas, and artist Tom Mandrake managed to collaborate and create a version of Black Adam that really feels like a clear blueprint for what would come one day. With a number of other individuals helping him, I feel it is Mandrake's art that really brings that flair and sense of menace to Black Adam. In comparison, Adam's first appearance in 1945 and his subsequent return in DC's Bronze Age left a lot more to be desired. The original 1945 comic very much had a lot of traits in Black Adam that are still used today. But in that story and the ones that would follow up until The New Beginning, Black Adam always came across as a bit of a dope. He was routinely tricked by various members of the Captain Marvel family into turning back into his human form, and very rarely got any kind of upper hand against anyone, even though he's so powerful. It wasn't until The New Beginning that Black Adam ever became a sense of a threat, not just because of the changes this story brought to his appearance, but in how the Thomas couple managed to present him and build him up as a worthy, heavy-duty adversary to Captain Marvel, or as he would later be called, Shazam. Like The Power of Shazam, The New Beginning is a big factor in forming Black Adam into what he is today. I gave it a slight edge over Power of Shazam because it feels like A New Beginning is a little more consistent in its take with the character as we know him now, and it even came first to boot. With New Beginning being published a full 7 years before Power of Shazam, it was a first major step forward for this character, very much setting the ground for pretty much every other comic series we are talking about concerning Black Adam, and once again just iterating how important Roy Thomas's career is to comic book history in general. Number 7. JSA, Black Adam and Isis. One of the last stories featuring Black Adam before the New 52 reboot, we come to our second, but far from final, Black Adam story with writing by Geoff Johns. This one deals with Black Adam finally resurrecting his deceased lover Isis, a powerful but benevolent woman that once brought out the best in Black Adam. Unfortunately, this resurrection process starts to corrupt her, and the rest of the Shazam family soon follows, slowly overwhelming them with this darkness until they become a major threat to both Black Adam's Nation of Kahndaq and the Justice Society of America, also known as the JSA. This is a pretty great story with a lot of creativity in its artwork. The corrupted Shazam family were all pretty uniquely styled, and there's a lot of fun moments in this book. Jerry Ordway, who already was the primary creative force behind The Power of Shazam, returns as the main artist of these books. So between him and Geoff Johns, there's a real sense of this being a prestige Black Adam title, featuring work by two of the most important figures in this character's history working together to create a comic that really feels special. Even though this is technically a JSA book, it still is all about Black Adam and his history as a character. With such knowledgeable creators behind the scenes, Black Adam and Isis features a lot of great details around Teth Adam's characters, a strong ending overall, and even finally brings a little bit of closure to deal with the fallout of Isis's original death. However, there are aspects of this story that feel insular, like Black Adam's story is starting to only really be about certain characters and ideas around the JSA, while everyone else, like the Justice League or other countries, were just being outright ignored in Black Adam's stories. It also leads to things feeling a little dragged out. Isis's character is borderline overused at this point, given how much she's been a part of Black Adam's story by this time. Her character doesn't really offer any additional insight into Black Adam that we hadn't already gotten by the time this story had rolled around. This is compounded by the fact that it's deep into the post-crisis continuity of Black Adam just before the New 52 reboot. As such, although I do appreciate everything about Black Adam and Isis and all that the story's going for, You have to read so many other stories to really fully appreciate the significance of this one. Black Adam and Isis on some level refers to events in Power of Shazam, other JSA comics from an earlier volume, Infinite Crisis, 52, another Black Adam series we'll be talking about shortly called The Dark Age, World War III, and much more. I love Black Adam and Isis as characters, but I fully appreciate how tough it is for someone to just jump into a story like this without getting completely lost. It's a great Black Adam story, but one I would recommend last for a new reader to check out. Not because it's bad, it's pretty spectacular in fact, but because there's so many stuff that is worth reading and should be read before this one. Number 6. Black Adam, The Dark Age. The Dark Age is a wonderful miniseries featuring Black Adam, written by DC comic book heavyweight Peter Tomasi, and art by another heavy hitter in the form of Doug Mahnke, along with Christian Alamy, Rodney Ramos, and Nathan Iring. This is easily one of my favorite Black Adam stories. Without getting into too much detail of other stories, following the events of a few crossovers including Infinite Crisis, 52, and World War III, Black Adam was left at his lowest point as a character in its entire history. Shunned out of power in his home nation of Kahndaq, stripped of his superpowers with them locked away behind a new mystery word chosen by Captain Marvel, Adam's family all brutally killed, with his friendships and alliances completely gone with it. Teth Adam finds himself with few resources and the most wanted man on the planet by nations all over the world. Because of all of this, the Dark Age looks and feels unique among Black Adam stories, where most of the best Black Adam stories are about a powerful man elevating his exploited people to the level of major players on the global stage, or an ancient being ruthlessly unleashing his powers against a much younger superhero. This one is completely different. Teth Adam is a man against the entire world, with little going for him, and having fallen about as far as any DC character ever has at this point. He has nothing to lose here and barely anything to live for. The series openly questions how this character can come back from committing outright atrocities, and it's really interesting because of that. While it does come across as understanding there really is no coming back from the stuff Black Adam has done by this time, there is a big gap between forgiving a character and him being beyond entertainment value. So there's a lot I like about this miniseries, even if there are aspects that leave some things to be desired. It makes sense that a story like this would look and feel extremely dark, given the nature of the content, but Black Adam's character is pushed to such extremes in this book that I did feel a bit of fatigue reading this one. It's made worse by the simple timing of the Dark Age. It's really hard to follow up on a story like Black Adam's in 52. Dark Age, in my opinion, does follow up on it well though, and it's a refreshing change of pace for a character who is so rarely the underdog in a story. It's good in how it begs the question of wondering how Black Adam could keep going after everything that's happened to him. Though I do wonder if it wouldn't have been best for this iteration of Black Adam to be put for rest for a little bit. Teth Adam is up against the world in this story, but the thing is, I do have a lot of sympathies for the world here, and often find myself actively rooting against the story's protagonist, which is odd, but far from bad either. It results in a somewhat strange and perhaps slightly off-balance story, one that just pushes and pushes the reader to their edge, right up to the point where we got a pretty clever ending. Overall, The Dark Age is well written, interesting, and one of the most unique, best Black Adam stories ever told. And I could ask for little more in a good comic book. Number 5. JSA Black Vengeance. We move on to another JSA story, but one that asks a lot less of its readers, and in my opinion, delivers a lot more with it, even though it is really only 3 issues long. This short story arc works well with its singular focus in mind, though. As Black Adam grows in power in the nation of Kahndaq, the entire nation is suddenly attacked by an extremely powerful being known as the Spectre. This serves as a nice standalone adventure for Black Adam, where we get to explore the man and his relationship with the people of Kahndaq as a ruler, as well as how this country views outsider superheroes like the Justice Society. Yeah, for those unaware, the movie didn't just pull the Justice Society's relationship with Black Adam out of nowhere. They've long had a relationship with Black Adam and a history that goes back a ways. It's complicated and complex, but interestingly also features a lot of mutual respect between this team of superheroes and this would-be supervillain. Teth Adam might have quite a bit of disdain towards Shazam or the Justice League, but the Justice Society in both the comics, and I guess the films now, There's a strong sense of connection between these two groups, earned over the course of a series of adventures. Black Vengeance is one of the last of these adventures, but it is quite a great bit of fun. The story is actually most focused not on Black Adam, but JSA member Adam Smasher and his friendship with Teth Adam. So yes, Black Adam might not be the main character of this story, but in every issue and every moment he manages to shine throughout. As always, he has this crazy presence in his best stories, that even in the face of something like the unstoppable power of the Spectre, Black Adam still manages to grow strong and convey himself as a force to be reckoned with. But where this book really stands out in how it showcases the man's longtime friendship with Adam Smasher. I love how the movie had a nod to that friendship, as they have a history across many JSA stories. But I think as far as the comics are concerned, this friendship and partnership between the two is best demonstrated in Black Vengeance. With writing by Jeff Johns and art by Don Kramer, Leonard Kirk, and Steven Sadowski, this story has a lot to offer and absolutely is worth checking out. Number 4. JSA Savage Times. For those counting, this is the third JSA story to make it into this top 10, and once again, Jeff Johns is one of the writers of this story. It says a lot about Johns, the JSA series, and how important these two things were for Black Adam's character. Savage Times is a bit unique from the other Jeff Johns stories though, because he co-wrote this with David S. Goyer. Now, if you know that name, you might be very surprised to hear that, because if you're like me, you associate Goyer with his film career, and I truly had no idea this dude was ever involved in comics. You'll forgive me for thinking that Goyer might not have read a single comic book in his life based on his movie career. Still, I shouldn't make fun of this guy because Savage Times is great, and there are a lot of strong elements to it that were very clearly written by David Goyer himself. Savage Times is a bit of a bizarre story and has a very urgent and frantic set of pacing. It is full of half-realized ideas and weird plot diversions. In other words, it reminds me a lot of the movies that Goyer would go on to write after making this. Still, in spite of that, and often owing to parts clearly written by Jeff Johns, Savage Times is an amazing, unforgettable bit of Black Adam history. Its plot, though meandering and complicated enough I am oversimplifying things greatly, involves Shazam and a couple of JSA members traveling back in time where they encounter past versions of Black Adam and Hawkwoman. That idea, knowing that Black Adam and Hawkwoman are both old beings and therefore would have simply been around 5,000 years ago, is really cool to me. Modern stories like Endless Winter, published recently by DC, have also had fun with the idea of Teth Adam being this ancient human who has been around for a long, long time. But Savage Times not only did it first, but did it in a way that when all is said and done, we really, really dig into Black Adam's character in a way that had never been done before. It is in Savage Times that Black Adam first takes that full step away from being a traditional supervillain into, well, not really a superhero or even a traditional anti-hero, but the far more ambiguous and complicated being that he is today. So this is a critical story in informing the modern take on Black Adam, and by far, in my opinion, the most interesting version of the character. If you like the film that just came out, in fact, if you like pretty much any modern Black Adam storyline or adaptation down the road, knowingly or not, these stories owe a lot to what was presented first in Savage Times. It's our first time really seeing Teth Adam as a thoughtful, introspective individual, one with depth and a sense of gravity to him that would inform pretty much every appearance going forward. It might not be my absolute favorite in terms of its artwork, as I do find other Black Adam comics stand out a lot more visually, but it is certainly one of the strongest takes on the character to date, and would open up many more opportunities for Teth Adam going forward. Honourable Mention, Black Adam film. Though quite a few comics were competitive with this top 10, including Black Adam's first appearance all the way back in the Golden Age, one thing I didn't really consider seriously was the Black Adam movie. This was always meant to be a more comic-focused video and a comic book list. As anyone remotely interested in the character is probably going to just see the movie no matter what I say, so a recommendation for it would feel pretty pointless. But for those interested in where I might rank the Black Adam film against the comics, it would probably go right here. I feel like the Black Adam movie is a solid to near perfect introduction of the character for a wider audience. A great balance of humor and more serious ideas, yet with everything I would have wanted for the first ever Black Adam movie. If you haven't seen it yet, I would check it out because it does service to the comic book character pretty well, and Dwayne Johnson just seems built for the role. Really, the whole thing just works as an excellent starting point for more fun out of the DCEU. Number 3. JSA Black Rain. And here we have the final JSA story to make it into this top 10. It's an impressive feat given how thoroughly this series has dominated the best of Black Adam, but it makes a lot of sense when you look at stories like Black Rain. This series of books involves depicting Black Adam and a handful of superpowered allies, Atom Smasher among them, conquering, or liberating depending on how you look at it, Kahndaq. Like in other JSA books, Black Adam isn't necessarily the only main character in these comics, but he still shines here more than your average comic featuring Black Adam by a wide mile. This is a great story where Tethadam really gets to cut loose and use his powers with a bit more purpose than what we had seen with this character up until now, trying to free his people from centuries of oppression. He's a little different when compared to the movie. The morality of Black Adam runs a lot grayer in the books, where he's very clearly just taking over the country for himself as opposed to just freeing it for the people, but it is an interesting idea. Kahndaq was far from a paradise before Black Adam returned to it, and I really appreciate how the comic acknowledges how countries like this, in the modern world without fancy things to exploit, usually just get ignored and left to wallow in their poverty. A relatively short story by Jeff Johns, Don Kramer, and a few other creators as the events cross over with the Hawkman series running at the time, Black Rain stands out thanks to its endless potential and new storytelling options it offered for Black Adam. Though Johns had clearly been mauling on the value of Black Adam in Savage Times, it really feels like this character first came into the full form as we know him today, here in this story, to a character with the potential complexity and moral ambiguity of Dr. Doom, and that's really cool. The graphic novel is great, and it was recently reprinted for the movie's release, so I do recommend you check out Black Rain for yourself. Number 2. Black Adam 2022. This one's a little different and a little harder to properly judge. Black Adam is a limited series that came out this year and will run for another few months. I don't particularly care to wait for another full year to properly contextualize this one, and besides, with Black Adam actively involved in Justice League these days, it's unlikely there's going to be a point anytime soon where there aren't more comics to review and revise this list anyways. He's an ongoing character, and there isn't ever really going to be a perfect time to review all his comics, as more will always be on the horizon. Also, and I can't stress this enough, it doesn't matter. Even if the current Black Adam series just tumbles in terms of quality for the rest of its run, it's already achieved enough that it would definitely belong on this top 10 no matter what, and it's not likely for that to change anytime soon. The reason for this is simple. Black Adam 2022 by writer Christopher Priest and artist Rafa Sandoval is a story completely unlike Black Adam's larger character history. Sandoval's artwork is striking and memorable, while for those that don't know, Priest has a very particular style of storytelling he deploys in his comics that really shines through in this book. If you know Priest and the type of comics he makes, and has done in the past with characters like Deathstroke, Black Panther, and Captain America, then you know exactly what to expect with this series of Black Adam comics. That style isn't for everyone, and it does put some readers off, but most people tend to enjoy his books for good reason. They tend to stick with you. They aren't simple, but often pretty ponderous, the kind of thing that you can actually read into more than once and get something new out of it. For Black Adam, it's also full of new ideas and directions for his character. The story seems to focus around Tethadam dying, and he seeks out a descendant to take his place, a younger med student living in America. Not wanting this new Black Adam to share his old darkness and corruption, Tethadam, going as Theoden more in this story, which is a really interesting nod to Power of Shazam, creates a new member of the Black Marvel family named White Adam. That alone is a pretty funny choice, not the least of which is that Malik White, who is chosen to be White Adam, does not care for that superhero name at all, and instead it's kind of forced on him, not unlike what happened in the She-Hulk show. White Adam has actually been established as an alternate version of Black Adam if he were less evil already, so this series comes across as a pretty clever take on a new variety of Black Adam stories. It pushes the character beyond some of the stuff Jeff Johns brought to the character, as much as I enjoyed it, into newer territory, and I love it. Like this series or not, and I don't doubt there will be people who aren't going to be fans of this one, there is no denying that this series is aggressively unique among the character's history. Priest has crafted something bold that offers a new take and direction for the character, so distinct from anything I've ever seen from Teth or Theodam up until now. That's not going to change anytime soon either. I'm not the first person to point out how strong this series is. I'm not the first person to point out how well it compares to the rest of Black Adam's history, and I'm certainly not going to be the last either. It's really, really good, and one of the best Black Adam stories currently available. In fact, I am of the opinion only one Black Adam story has ever risen above what this current series has so far achieved. Number 1, 52 and World War III, also known as Rise and Fall of an Emperor. So send soldiers, send armies. The Doom Patrol, Martian Manhunter, Father Time, the Justice Society, Titans, and even Donna Troy, who assumes the mantle of Wonder Woman. One by one, all fall before the unstoppable Black Adam, with many being killed along the way. My favorite Black Adam story probably won't come as a surprise to fans of this character, since you aren't going to be a fan of Black Adam for very long before somebody tells you about 52. This is a fun and massive story, and thanks to that enormous length, only includes Black Adam in a small part of it. Though you can get the Black Adam story in this reprinted book, which will cover the gist of things, 52 is best enjoyed as it was originally published, where you can appreciate how all the other characters and stories tie in with Black Adam's role. This is a story where all the content surrounding Black Adam and the JSA, as well as all the progress he had made up until then in ruling Kahndaq, comes crashing down violently and painfully. Adam gets had and nearly destroyed in a way few other superheroes or villains have ever experienced in DC history. He suffers brutally, and mostly as a result of the man at least trying to do the right thing. It's fascinating, tragic, and deeply unsettling. The kind of story I've read and really feel like I've never stopped thinking about. Once again, Geoff Johns, one of the writers of 52, really seems like the creative energy behind this character in the early 2000s, and I think he does a really good job with writing Black Adam. This take on the character is memorable as hell, and there is real reason this story and his fall of grace is remembered so thoroughly by comic book fans. Tethadam almost seems fated to fall now, at least in scenarios where he tries to lead Kahndaq solely by force. On top of all of that, World War III then shows him lashing out and fighting back after losing his family. He's dangerous and a huge threat to everyone else here, but given what happened to him, I can really understand where he's coming from. I would probably be out of control upset too. The only difference between me and Tethadam is I don't have powers to level a country. That's what I like most about 52. Black Adam basically turns into a war criminal, and the writers do an amazing job at giving you a sense of his mental state at every step up until that point. It leads to you feeling sympathetic for him, even though he's doing terrible things, and it's a fascinating perspective on any superpowered character, but one we all too rarely get to see in comics from Marvel and DC. Instead, it feels like something Invincible would do, grounding the fantastical superpowers of Black Adam in a harsh and unforgiving reality, where mistakes can represent a devastating loss of life you can never take back. I've never read a DC comic quite like 52 and how it treats Black Adam, but I do hope somehow, someday, someway, one day, another writer is able to top it somehow, and give us something even more significant for the Black Adam character. That's the fun thing about DC and Marvel characters, is that they do just keep going, and there's always the possibility something new and amazing is on the horizon. The Christopher Priest Black Adam series is a great example of that. So these are my top 10 Black Adam comics. I hope you enjoyed the list. Let me know which ones your favorite Black Adam stories are, or if I missed any that you think should have been on here, or what you think in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you next time on Comic Island.